Well, we'll,
you know.
yeah. I mean, this is more of a broadcast model than like Zoom, so as long as they're at the right,
If they're at the right place,
it will
period.
go.
It'll, like on YouTube, it'll automatically pop up all of this right
No,
now.
no,
No,
no, it's actually broadcast, starting live.
yeah. What I mean is they'll see this right now though, before we start.
Yes, well, probably they'll see one single camera shot
Oh, okay, that's
over
it.
to the piano.
Okay,
Okay.
got it. Where is the camera exactly?
If you look behind you, there's two. There's one right in the
Oh.
center.
So that's the full circle here.
Our grief is a holy thing, Tracy Barrett writes. It is that proof that another life touched ours in a profound way. It is the mark of love, the mark of connection, and the mark of a life well lived. We will mourn and we will cry. Time will move on, and we may not hurt in the same way we do now. But then a thought or a bit of music or a smell will remind us of her, and it will all come back. Those moments, too, are holy. They are reminders that that connection, that will never fully go away. It is important to hold on to that connection because it is through those memories that Pat stays with us. In our memories of her, that love and connection stay alive, and with it, a piece of her. We will share some of those memories today. Hold on to them. Tell the stories that make you smile, the stories that make you laugh. Share the memories with people that knew her and people that didn't. May they remind you of the beauty of Pat's life, of her passion, and her connection to us. And may it bring you peace on this day. We begin by lighting a flaming chalice, the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith. So welcome on this Saturday afternoon. I'm the Reverend Oscar Sinclair. I serve as the minister of the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, where some of us are gathered here in person and others are gathered online in our live streaming space. We are gathered today to celebrate a life, the life of Florence, Patricia, Pat, Green. Memorials are powerful moments in our lives. Each time we gather for one of these services, they bring to mind all the other losses that we've had, what the poet Sarah Freeley calls loss and its sad math, how every subtraction is exponential, how each grief multiplies the one preceding it. And that's okay. Memorial services bring to mind all the other losses we have. And we are in a kind of season of loss right now. All of us are a little unmoored. We're doing things differently than we have in the past, and many of us are grieving losses large and small. And so it's right to acknowledge that this is not how we usually do memorial services. Because of the ongoing pandemic, a small group of us are gathered here in the church's sanctuary while others are participating online. This is different than how we usually do it, and there is a loss in that as well. But even in that, we are able to gather. It is both the wonder of the age that we live in, with live streaming cameras and people participating from across the country, and something strange and difficult to be in this room with 7 of us. So we gather in grief, but grief looks like lots of things. Most straightforwardly, it is sadness, absolutely, but it can also be confusion, numbness, surprise, anger. All of this is grief, and it can be intense. So, beloveds, whether you are gathered here in person or on the live stream, be gentle with each other today and in the days to come. The faith celebrated in this place, Unitarian Universalism, makes no claim on what comes after death. Our memorial services are not an opportunity for repentance or altar calls. Our memorial services are meant to mark the passing of a life, to gather and to tell the story of the person who is gone. Because the truth is that life is way, way too big and too hard for any of us to try and go it alone. So in moments of celebration and moments of grief, we gather, whether in person, on Zoom, or live streamed out into the world. This is holy work and ancient work. It is some of the hardest things that we do in our lives and the most important. Someone we knew and cared about is no longer with us. The human condition is to be alive, to live and love, and then to die. And so we gather in these moments in our shared humanity, sharing our sense of loss, but also our sense of life. Let us begin with music. Joining us today are our accompanist, Bill Carpenter, on the piano, and our music director, Dr. Bob Fusen, who is running the live stream. Thank you both for your presence and your gifts to this place. Our next reading is from Robert Frost in the poem Acceptance. He writes, "When the spent sun throws up its rays on cloud and goes down burning into the gulf below, no voice in nature is heard to cry aloud at what has happened. Birds, at least, must know. It is the changed darkness in the sky, murmuring something quiet in her breast. One bird begins to close a faded eye, or overtaken too far from the nest, hurrying low above the ground, some waif swoops just in time to his remembered tree. At most, he thinks or twitters softly, safe. And now let the night be dark for all of me. Let the night be too dark for me to see. Into the future, let what will be, be." I did not meet Pat Green in life. While her family have been members of this church for many years, it is only through the last weeks of preparing for this service that I have heard the stories of her life. My tradition says that what we do at the end of life is not talk about what comes next, but that we tell the story of the life that has been. And we do that, we say, because each person has inherent worth and dignity. Each person is beloved. In the theology that I grew up with, I would say that each of us is beloved of God. We make no exceptions to this rule. Each of us is unique. Each life has things we celebrate and things that we regret. But even in that complexity, knowing that we are imperfect beings who disappoint and challenge each other, there is great, great beauty. We are all flawed, and so we are all beloved. And what that means on days like this is that we tell stories. We look with honesty at the world. Pat Green was alive. In her living, she had triumphs and tragedies, joys and sorrows. And in her living, she loved many people and was beloved in turn. Florence Patricia Brand Green was born in Waukegan, Illinois, on March 26, 1931, to Laura Potiff and Orrin Wesley Brand. As O.W. was a Methodist minister, the family moved frequently and served congregations in Illinois, Minnesota, and Iowa. And here I'll take a brief parenthetical note from the obituary to say that my grandfather was a Methodist minister, traveling around Illinois at about the same time, and that is a small world. Pat left Algona High School early to attend Morningside College, and in 1952, graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Drake University. There she met Roland Cox Walter, and they married in 1953. They had 3 children and were divorced in 1964. In 1985, she moved to Lincoln, Nebraska to be near family, and soon met and was married to Henry Murphy until his death in 1996. Pat was married to Matthew Green from 2000 to 2003. She died in Lincoln, Nebraska on June 5th, 2021. After college, Pat did graduate work at the Art Institute of Chicago and the University of Iowa. She taught art education at the Emmitsburg, Iowa Junior College, and for many years taught K-12 art in public schools in Illinois and Iowa. And in retirement, Pat continued to paint in many media and develop friendships in the Lincoln art community. She loved people, art, music, theater, and world religions. To sum up a life in an obituary is a complicated task. We each contain multitudes. We each contain story upon story upon story. We each gather at memorial services because the life that we are remembering is a life that touched ours. That each of us has a story to tell. In getting ready for this service, Pat's family gave me a copy of an article that Pat wrote about teaching at Mount Pleasant. When I first taught in Mount Pleasant, she wrote, the children lined up at the pencil sharpener. I asked why they were doing this, and they said that the art teacher before had them sharpen their pencils. The first day of class, they drew pictures so tiny, it appeared that they were hiding and would soon fall off of the paper. I asked them why they were so timid about what they thought. They told me that their teacher stood over them with his grade book and watched every move that they made. This bit of information told me a lot, and I told them that from that day forward, they were to draw with their erasers. Because if they didn't like what they drew, they could always just brush the crumbs off their paper and begin again. Also, this would help them draw much larger and more freely by using the eraser. This is a story about an art class. And of course, it's a story about much more than an art class. I believe that Pat lived her life drawing with her eraser, starting over when she needed to, and living her life as large and free as she wanted to. And for now, as we gather, the story goes to Robert Frost. Safe. The night may be too dark for me to see into the future, but let what will be, be. We'll now have a collection of pictures that the families put together of Pat's life. Some years ago now, there was an art show that Pat's art was a part of. And in one of those coincidences that is not really a coincidence, somebody had a camera and asked her both to talk about her art and then turned it to the art itself. So we're going to spend a few minutes hearing from her herself.
How are you?
Well, a little bit excited tonight because of this show and my friends coming. And of course, there'll be a lot of people here tonight because I believe they seat about 400 in the main auditorium for the theater production of Fiddler on the Roof. And so this gallery is right across from the theater, and I have not quite 40 paintings hanging in here right now. There were 19 I didn't get hung because there wasn't enough wall space, but then
Okay.
anyway,
That's all
I
right.
think that we got it together finally.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. Tell me, how many shows have you had?
Well, I had some shows in Illinois, and also had one of my paintings on television with a group of other artists. And I've had, of course, this show. I haven't done a lot of showing. Mainly, I've kept these in my house. And now that I'm 62 years old, I have decided that it's about time to have a show and to do something about it right now.
Okay, and are all of these for sale?
All the paintings are for sale, with the exception of about 3.
Okay.
So.
Okay. How do you decide what to paint? What comes in your mind?
Well,
What starts you with a particular picture?
Well, basically, sometimes I don't even know when I start painting what I'm going to be painting. And other times I've been thinking on something, and all of a sudden it comes out, and within a half an hour I have the painting done.
Do you sketch this on paper first and then transfer it to
I do.
canvas?
I paint directly on the canvas. I've done only about 2 drawings with design markers before I really began the
Oh.
painting. And the rest I just do spontaneously on canvas.
What if you mess up?
Well, then I try to make it look like it was reasonable instead of unreasonable.
That's good. That's the way to do it. And how long does it take for you to paint one picture,
Well-
a large one?
Well, most of these large ones I did like overnight,
Oh my!
and I don't believe that I really spent maybe more than, at the very most, a day or two on developing or finishing a painting
From start to finish.
from start to finish.
Well, that's
That's the beauty of acrylics, you know, they dry in 20 minutes, and then you can build on them, and then you can let it go for a few days, and then you can do a wash over them if you want to, and so there are a lot of different things that make it very flexible.
Sure. How did you begin your painting career?
Well, I started, well, when I was very young, I used to paint. I remember the first time I ever did a painting was I was babysitting Dr. Perry Amick's children, and this was when I was about Anna's age, my granddaughter, who's 10. I might have been around 12. And I painted on some building board with watercolors that their children had. And they had building board, they had remodeled their kitchen, and I rather enjoyed what I did, and I took it to the state fair, and I got a second prize on it.
Wow.
So my mother kept a running account of my paintings, and when I was 16, I received my first oils, and we didn't know what kind of oil you're to use with oil paints. And so my mother decided to give me her sewing machine oil, and then I made my first painting at 16 in
That's
oils.
great.
And then when I went to Morningside College for 2 years, and I decided that I liked the classes I took in art history and in design and that type of thing. So I thought, well, maybe this is what I really would enjoy doing. Because in my day, so many women married right out of college, or they worked a year and then got married, and you didn't hear about career women.
Oh, right, right.
So
So you had about 2 years of formal training in painting then?
no, then I went to Drake University, and I finished. I graduated Bachelor of Fine Arts.
Oh,
And then I went to the Chicago Art Institute, and I also for a summer, and then I went to UNL. I went for a semester in painting, although I took other subjects.
do you
But
teach?
I just all the way through have continued education in some field, either mythology or art history or painting or block printing or whatever.
Do you teach painting?
I taught 13 years,
Oh, wow.
from kindergarten through junior college, in several different communities in Iowa and Illinois.
What is
And
your
had a lot of different exhibits of my children's work. I had usually about 1,500 paintings up every year to show, because I had a huge number of children that I was teaching.
Sure. What's your favorite painting that you've ever done?
Well, I think that it's like a mother with her children. I can't decide. I like every one of them for different reasons, and sometimes it prevents you from being objective about your paintings. But at least I'm happy about it, and that really is basically what counts. I think, you know, it's a hobby for me. It's something I enjoy.
How many have you painted total?
Probably near 100 paintings or more. That I don't have them here. I've given quite a few away, too.
Oh,
I had this idea because people liked a painting, then I felt obligated to give it to them, and now I've changed my mind. I'm not going to do that anymore.
no.
First, I'm starting with my granddaughter, my only grandchild, Anna Walter, and she's my child protege in painting and drawing. She's done some drawings of me, foreshortened drawings, different types of things, and of course we've tried different things at my house when I have her there, and I'm taking care of her, like.
What do you think of Grandma's painting?
It's fine.
Do you have a favorite one that she's done?
No.
No? Probably safer not to have, right?
Yes.
Anna, you just finished 4th grade, now going into 5th grade. Do you have an idea of the type of career you think you'd like to go into when you grow up?
No.
You don't
not
have-
really.
Are you going to be an artist part-time?
Maybe it's a hobby.
That sounds wonderful. Okay. And this is a friend of mine, Deanna Harris, who lived and grew up in the same town that I grew up in from 4th grade to 10th grade. She was 10 years younger than I am, so therefore we really didn't know each other until we met at a party, a garden party here in Lincoln, Nebraska. And then she mentioned she was going to her hometown, and I said, well, where is that? And she said, Sac City, Iowa. And I said, well, I grew up there. And so we knew a lot of people in common, so ever since we've been friends.
Patty and I both know the first person we ever met, so we knew lots of the same people. Bob was here just this weekend, our mutual artist friend.
Bob found my grades from grade school. You know, the office that keeps a record of your grades, and this went back probably 50 years at least. And they were trying to raise the grade school and blew it up, and then all the private records had been left in that office, and they flew all over the playground. And a fellow was walking through the playground, recognized my name, and gave my records to Bob Wyckoff, who lived in Sac City, Iowa. And Bob is, in a way, related to Deanna through marriage. And when he came over to visit Deanna, he brought my records. Well, at Christmas time, I called her, Deanna, and I said, what's your zip code? I want to send you a Christmas card. She said, I'm going to send you a Christmas card, too, and I'm going to enclose your grades from grade school. That's nice to hear.
One grade was something deportment or something like that, and she said, oh, I don't want Anna to see that.
That was because I talked a lot in class.
Can't believe that, can you, Anna? Neither of us would talk too much.
And this is my husband, Henry Murphy, an artist in his own right, a person who had a painting hanging in the Oval Office when President Roosevelt was president. He did a painting of Old Ironsides. So he's very interested in art, and he's very supportive in my painting, and it makes it very nice. Would you like to say something?
No, I just get embarrassed when I have to talk in a mic.
All right.
I'm not a microphone man.
Well, you're doing pretty well for not being one. This is my son-in-law, Tim Renna, and my daughter, Kay, and she is one of my oldest daughter. I have 3 children. Sandy and Bruce were not able to be here, or Rex, my son-in-law, Sandy's husband, or my Bruce's fiancée, Judy. They weren't able to be here, but anyway, I have one, and she's an associate professor at the university, and his mother's very proud of her. Of course, she likes to brag about her children's successes. Is there something that you might want to say now, Tim?
Just that I think it's great that Pat has this show. I've always been impressed with her use of color. There are several of them here that I think are just wonderful because of the way that she can blend colors in such a unique fashion. It's a real gift, and I hope she continues painting.
Thank you. Okay.
My mother's been an art teacher for me as well as for Anna. I had her as my own art teacher for, 7 years? Something like that, for a long time when I was growing up. And this is a wonderful show. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We gather to tell stories, and the ongoing pandemic has required us to do that in some different ways. So rather than spending a lot of time introducing this next piece, I think I do on camera at the start of the video. We recorded memories on Thursday with a couple folks who were able to come.
So I don't know when you want me to get
Sure,
started.
this is kind of your time. So
Okay.
normally at a service at this church, towards the end of a memorial service, we would invite folks to come up to the pulpit to share stories or memories. Because of the pandemic, we are not able to do that in the same way.
Sure.
So we've done this instead. So I'm happy to chat for a bit, or if you've got something prepared and ready to go, we can just start recording and go.
Well, why don't we just start recording? I just have a couple, just two seconds,
Sure.
or
And
maybe
if,
1 minute.
if you could share your name at the beginning.
Oh, sure,
Yeah,
I will. Are you ready for me?
ready when you are.
Okay. Well, I'm Lisa Brumbaugh, and Pat Green was my aunt, my mother's sister. What I enjoy remembering most about Aunt Pat is her laughter and her sense of humor. Out of my 5 aunts, I don't think any of them expressed more humor or laughter than she did. I also remember her wide range of interests, her curiosity about the world, and her ability to make friends with just about anyone, anywhere, even on a train when she was coming up to visit my mom. Many of my mom's friends ended up being Pat's friends, and they often asked about her and what was going on in her life. And of course, there are many stories and anecdotes about Aunt Pat and our family, but they can't all be told here. So I'll simply say that it was a privilege to know her, a pleasure to be with her, and I'll remember her always. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am Hannah Larson. I knew Pat and her daughter Sandy when we were friends in elementary school. That's Harlan Elementary School in Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Pat was my art teacher as well as Sandy's mom. She was an awesome artist and a beautiful woman. We were always excited when it was art day at school. She inspired us with her enthusiasm, her sense of humor, and adventure. Towards the end of her life, she was very brave through the pain, and I will always remember her having a heart of gold, her joie de vivre, and how much she loved her daughter, Sandra. Bon voyage, Pat. We all send our love.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a list of, her positive qualities. I mean, as with anyone, she wasn't perfect. So, and I'm not perfect, neither are you. We all have issues, right? So, I mean, to people outside, I mean, her students, she was a great art teacher. She was mine as well as my sister's, and I think my brother. And so she had a lot of kids that she taught that are now, I think, well into in the early 60s, most of them. But she was a great art teacher. Something that's a little bit unusual about her is she was very compassionate for the poor and mentally ill. I mean, I have so many stories about that. It's like legendary. There wasn't a poor person or a person in need that she wouldn't like bend over backwards to try to help. And I don't think a lot of people actually do these things. I think they talk about it, but they don't actually do it. And she did, which was, quite amazing, really. I mean, she walked the talk. She was the daughter of a Methodist minister, so she never really talked about religion. She just did it. I mean, however you do it. She had a beautiful singing voice. She played the piano. She would just very passionately play her piano, and a lot of show tunes, from the 50s and 60s, she'd be playing those. She was very passionate with the men that she loved. She loved my stepfather. She was just absolutely crazy about him, almost to the point. She was very very different than a lot of women of her time who were primarily, as she mentions in the DVD that I edited, most of the people of her generation, the women were homemakers totally. She was a career person for at least some of her life. So she was creative, very, very pretty in my opinion. I have a picture on the wall here of her, one of her paintings that she hired I think a Russian artist to do. So she was hungry for all things cultural. She was a very loyal friend, very loyal. She'd do anything for her friends.
I think that was the end. We'll now invite both Sandy and Kay to share what they've brought. So Sandy, we'll start with you.
Well, here we are, live streaming. It's very odd to be in this situation, looking at my brother-in-law, my niece, and my sister, and the few people in this room. I don't think anyone really told any stories, and there were so many. So I thought I'd just tell 2 stories about my mother. One of them is a story of her compassion. In Mount Pleasant, Iowa, there was a woman she looked a lot like Aunt Eller, but she didn't have that personality. She was probably 90 years old, and her name was, I think, Mrs. Woodson or Mrs. Woodhouse. And she lived in a home that had no running water. She had to go to a well to get her water. Basically no electricity or anything. And this woman had to take care of her, I believe it was her 3 or 4 grandchildren, 2 grandchildren. And they had been abandoned by their parents. And the house that they were in had very little room, so she had to sleep in a rocking chair, and her grandchildren, of course, slept in the beds. So my mother found, I believe, an agency that would help them, but also my mother provided money and a lot of support for this woman. So she got a really nice house that had electricity and running water. And as all of these stories go, of course, in spite of the fact my mother was so compassionate, Mrs. Woodson's 2 sons moved into the house, and Mrs. Woodson ended up back in the rocking chair. But, of course, Mom's heart was in the right place. So it was, and there's so many stories. I mean, some of these people might actually be listening, and they remember Mother right now. The other story is a pretty uplifting one. It's about how creative my mother was. When we were children living in Mount Pleasant, she had some very creative birthday parties, and mine was the backward birthday party. So everything had to be done backwards. The kids had to walk in the house backwards. We started with dessert, and then we worked our way, to breakfast. I invited all of the children, the girls that were in my class. I think I was in 3rd or 4th grade. So there must have been about 22 children. And the house we had was very small. I'm going to say like maybe 500, 600 square feet. It was very, very small. And these young ladies came, and they basically slept all over the house. And my mother did sleep in her bedroom, but the children were all around her bed too, because there was very little room. And I think there was one young girl who had to sleep in the bathtub, and of course I felt sorry for her, so I slept, next to her by the tub. But it was my birthday, and so in the morning, Diane Hatch had an idea that we should cook breakfast for my mother. So we all made breakfast, and then we took it into her, woke her up, and we gave her the breakfast while she was in bed, and all the girls sat around the bed, and my mother woke up and she goes, "Oh, well, that was so kind of you to do this for me." And then we all were sitting there and said, "Now, go ahead, eat it." And of course, it tasted terrible, but she was very kind and generous, and she just sort of, she ate it, but it obviously didn't taste very good. Anyway, she was very, very creative. Kay had a really fun birthday party as well, and I know Bruce had an experience with his friends as well. So that's all I have as far as the stories. I give you more, but, just email me. I'll let you have the rest of them. And I also have a statement from Joanne Mushrow, who was my stepfather's niece, and she was a nun for many years, and she wanted me to read this. My first memory of Patricia Green was when I was in high school, and she was introduced to me as my aunt's sister-in-law. I remember an effervescent, stylish, and highly intelligent lady. What I admired most about her was how knowledgeable she was in so many areas, and the impact her colorful art had, sparking my enthusiasm for painting. She taught art to children and was a community theater actress, which influenced my stepping into the stage and into a world of new friends, parties, and fun. Pat possessed many gifts, but her greatest gifts, she would say, were her children, whom she always praised for their accomplishments and had good deeds. Pat was truly, in life and on stage, in her paintings, and in person, a shining star.
Hi, I'm Kay Walter. I'm Pat's eldest daughter. And I wanted to pick up on something that Mom talked about in the video, and that was the importance of a career. So as I was going through her things after her death, I found, if one thing, I found 50 of them. And it's a copy of a poem that was written by Elizabeth Mertz, who Anna may remember, also known as Barbara Mertz. It's called Accomplishments, and I won't read the whole thing, but I did want to read a couple of the stanzas and then the ending. It's Accomplishments. When Dante contemplated hell, or Shakespeare penned a sonnet, did Junior interrupt to say his cake had ketchup on it? When Holmes and Brandeis donned their robe and gave their wise opinions, was laundry piled up 4 feet high with socks mixed up with linens? How much greater, then, the task of those who manage both, who juggle scholarship with child development and growth? And how much greater is the praise for those who persevere and finish their advanced degrees and take up a career? So this is a very meaningful poem, obviously, to her. I mean, almost every box that I opened up had this poem in it. And she was certainly a role model for Sandy Bruce and myself. All of us went on and got advanced degrees, and all of us had careers. And I think that our lives were more meaningful for the time that we spent with her and what we learned from her. So thank you very much.
We do not have time to share every story that brings us here. Because we are live streaming this, we don't have the technology for everybody participating to share their stories. But as this next song plays, think about what your story is, the story of your life, and how that story intersects with the story of Pat Green. Each Sunday, as we gather here at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, or on this live stream, we say some version of these words. We join together as a community to celebrate the moments of our lives. We share with one another our joys, our sorrows, the events that mark the steps on our journey. The threads of sorrow and those of joy are intertwined in the fabric of our lives, present for all, remembered by all. We share those threads, and then they are woven together with those of others in our community. Our joys are shared and magnified. We are comforted in our sorrows. As this service comes to a close, that is my wish for you. May your joys be shared and magnified, and your sorrows comforted. Go in peace, beloveds, and amen.